Hello everybody, my name is The Geekimus and welcome back to my channel. My name is The Geek and I'm a big fan of Genshin Impact. I've been playing the game since the original 1 point patches and I've been pretty excited to see where the game will be going on in the future. So in today's video we will be talking about Genshin Impact, where I think it's going to be going and what will be the future of the franchise. Now, for many people who know, Genshin originally started with its 1 point patches and it had the full story of the original Archon quest for Chapter 0 and Chapter 1, Mondstadt and Liyue. This obviously means that, of course, Genshin right away launched with 2 full giant Archon quests and a giant story, just to make things have a very interesting launch at first. And of course this means that right away we got really spoiled about what a future of Genshin Impact storyline could officially look like. It wasn't until the 2 point patches in which we saw what Genshin's kind of patches would look like in the future. Of course, Inazuma would eventually launch with the 2.0 patch and would only have the first 2 chapters of Inazuma and the very beginning of the Inazuma landscape unlocked during the very first patch. 2.1 and 2.2 would eventually launch, giving us the remainder of those patches, giving us the rest of the story and the rest of the landscape and islands that would make up Inazuma. And of course, this would eventually continue on until we got to the continued on. Sorry, misspoke. Like, for example, we would have, Sumeru would have a similar landscape idea. We would have the original, we'd have their patch, and then we would have the 0.1 and 0.2 to continue the story and to expand out the region until it was fully done. Same situation would happen with the next patch and I was going to talk about, which would be the, Fontaine patch, which would have, yet again, similar situation. We would start out with 0.0, which would be the initial region with the first 2 chapters. Then 0.1 would have the remaining 2 more chapters and a new area. And then, of course, then we would have the continuation of it with the 0.2 and the final bit of land exploration. Now, all these would eventually headline where the patches would have filler content and new character story and arcs introduced to kind of keep the area and keep the game going. This would mean smaller stuff would be added. For example, you would see events that would take place in both the current region and new one, or you would also see some gameplay that would take place where you would see the landscape. Rather, you see some kind of new event or some kind of story arc that would fully make the game kind of more interesting. A good example of this would be adding new mechanics such as the Genius Invocation TCG game inside of Genshin, or smaller stuff like that. And of course, it was very interesting and unique, and well, I personally like some of it, and some of it I don't. And of course, that would continue on until we got to Natlan, which is the most recent arc. Natlan, of course, had the 5.0 patch, which was the big beginning of the patch, and then it would continue on until we got to 5.1, which 5.1 was weird because it didn't expand the region, but it did give us the Chapter 3 and the Chapter 4. 5.2 came out and gave us the official expansion of the story, but was kind of weird because it didn't really, it didn't really give us the, what am I trying to say? It didn't continue the story like the other patches would have. A bit of a weird continuation that started there. Like 5.2 yeah, 5.1 might have had a new story, but it didn't really give us the continuation of the it didn't give us the continuation of the 5.1 storyline I was kind of hoping it would have given us. Now, 5.2 did come out and did give us a new region, but this time around they only gave us a interlude to the Archon quest. And it seems like 5.3 will be the last update to kind of push that forward. I'm thinking that that's when we'll see the continuation of a lot of the smaller stuff, like the final conclusion to the Archon quest with 5.5, the chapter 5 of the Archon quest. And of course, I should say this is coming out right before the unfortunately this is coming out like right before the 5.3 quest at the time of recording. So anyone who maybe if you're watching this video after that live stream has come out, and we do know that officially that's happening. Now, through leaks, we do know we will be getting the Muvaka, I can't say her name correctly, and for the character pool, so we will be getting the Archon. On top of the fact, we also are going to be receiving the Pyro Traveler at long last in 5.3. That's also been confirmed through leaks. Well, not confirmed. Leaks are leaks. They're not official. And I think that's going to be pretty interesting just to see what will come out of these leaks and all kinds of content like that. So I do think that's going to be pretty interesting to see what the future will hold. But, of course, now we have to talk about what I think is going to be the future of Genshin. Mind you, this is year 4 of Genshin. It's been going on for a while. So here is my full-on prediction. I think that Genshin Impact 5.3 is gonna, be the conclusion to the main story crux. I could be right, could be wrong. It kind of determines what the live stream will show, which unfortunately will probably debut before I have a chance to look at. But a big crux that I think we're gonna see is I think that Genshin is going to. I think honestly, like we said, Genshin will do what it normally does between the updates. We'll have, of course, 5.1, not 5.1, but the 5.3 after that will start doing like story quests with the characters outside of the. Of course, we'll get that like story quests with the other characters from Natlan. Maybe a character quest instead of these tribal stories. And on top of that, we'll finally get the final tribe, which will get the conclusion to getting the, of course, the reputation up for Natlan fully completable at that point. Which shouldn't take long, considering that during the 5.0, I was able to get the entire the first 3 trials completely, completely completed by that point, so it wasn't that hard necessarily to complete the Natlan reputation quest. Now the big thing I think we're gonna see in the future is I think that after this there's gonna be some kind of Natlan celebration. That's like a big thing. That will be like a party quest that will get all 6 tribes. I think that will be some kind of quest in the middle. I think at some point we're gonna revisit. We'll revisit some of the tribes or we'll come back to some of the prior regions in some kind of celebratory event, because that's always something that Genshin tries to do. And at the same time, I think that that's just what's going to happen. And like many times, I didn't bring this up quite yet, but between the very last update of every region always tends to have a major event that adds a temporary land. The very first one, for maybe those who are older than Genshin but didn't continue playing, would be the Golden Apple Pelago, which was an area that was added to the game as a temporary area. And this was kind of supposed to be a preview of things you would see in the future. And that's kind of how every single one of these events have worked in the past. The last one was the storybook that we got added into. We got to like kind of go into. and it allowed us to explore that region and have some fun looking into it. So I do think that's going to be kind of an interesting to see what the future of this is going to be. So I do kind of get curious what they're going to do with that. But mind you, we also will at some point during probably in the update before that, or the update, like the 1 or 2 updates before that, we'll have the Dansleaf quest. Because Dansleaf usually shows up and drags us into some kind of quest that's related to rather the Abyssal Order, Conria, or maybe even our sibling. The last one, and I'm still kind of in shock about, because during that event, we actually ran into our sister, despite the fact that we actually don't, have a recollection of that, because the memory was, because unfortunately the memory was wiped from our heads. But that is a interesting thing. We fully don't know what the future of Dansleaf's questline is quite yet, but obviously it's going to be highly important. And that's kind of the main crux, I'm going to say. I'm very interested to see what's going to come in the future with Genshin. I think we have a lot of interesting quest lines coming up. So let's get into it. Obviously, Genshin 6.0 will be the first time we enter into Chesnaya, a area that's gonna be pretty intense because we'll be in the Fatui Heartland, dealing with the Terizia, and it's hard to say what's gonna happen. I think it truly depends on what's gonna happen to the Pyronosis. If the Pyronosis is taken rather by the captain or another Harbinger, or if it's destroyed, I think that's going to be really change what happens with the Fatui plotline. And I think we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Rather, we're going to be invited by someone from... We're either going to get invited by someone important from Chesnaya, rather the Harbingers themselves, or someone important to us is going to be kidnapped, and we're going to be forced to go to Chesnaya. It's going to be one of those two kind of plot lines. My honest belief is somehow Child or the House of Hearth is going to be what's going to drag us to Chesnaya. One of those two quest lines are going to end up dragging us there, and I do think that's going to be what causes us to go to Chesnaya. Now, I can't be certain. I do think that this break period between plot lines probably will drag out the 6-point updates a bit more than even Natlan. A big thing with Natlan, I think they're going to have to drag it out just because it is the conclusion to the Fatui storyline. And I think that's going to be why they're going to have to drag out this update just a bit more than the other ones. And that's because it's more important than I think the other ones. At least that's my own personal opinion. I think honestly the Chesnaya plotline is going to be very important, and eventually it's going to have to be a way to tie us back to the Abyssal timeline. So rather, someone's going to cause that the Abyssal Order is going to attack Chesnaya, or something's going to happen that we're going to have to help. And the 6-point updates, I think, will probably be dragged out to maybe the 4th update, much like Natlan. And it's going to have to be something that brings us to that. Because, like, I just can't potentially see us not ending up in Chesnaya and it not being a major plot line with the, the Terizia about to battle against maybe the Heavenly Principles or someone even more important in the main storyline. Of course, I'm going to say this as well. I could be completely wrong, but I really do think it's going to end with us rather teaming up with the Fatui against the Abyssal Order, or us eventually having to have a grand battle against the forces of rather the Abyssal Order with our sibling character or the Heavenly Principles. And then, of course, Chapter 8, the final chapter, is going to be super important because it's another plotline that's kind of been set up throughout this series, is the Abyssal Order and Conria. I don't understand how Conria is going to fully work. We should clarify. Conria is going to be a huge plot, like a huge plot line, because it's supposed to be destroyed. As we understand from everything related around, the destruction of Conria, the Archon War, it is supposed to be fully destroyed. We know that its citizens have become a mixture of the hilly trolls we've been fighting throughout the series, or a bunch of the characters such as Dansleif, and also Conria are the ones who brought us, the Abyssal Twins, to this world. It's going to have a lot of twists, and I don't think I can properly guess what they're going to do with this plotline. I think a big thing with it is it's going to be interesting just to see where this plotline even ends up. I do think it's going to become a giant war-like finale where all of the regions are going to have to come together and plot a final assault against the Abyssal Order, or whoever the main villain will be at the end. Rather that be the Heavenly Principles, the lady who we fought at the beginning, or an unknown force that hasn't quite been introduced yet. And I do think at the end, eventually, the Abyssal Twin, is going to end up being our friend, and we're going to have, they'll come back, and we'll eventually have them. And I think that's when they'll finally become a playable character. It's hard to say if they'll be more versatile, like the Traveler, like they can switch their element and can be powered up like the Traveler, or if they're going to end up having a 8th element that hasn't been introduced yet. Because I do think if Dansleif is added, it's going to add a 8th element, whatever the ability Dansleif has. And I think that would be something that the Traveler would have. So it's just a giant speculation. And like I said, I think the final 2 years of the active development is going to be a kind of wild when updates of the Traveler and their sibling going across the land of Devat with their, meeting all their friends, attending events like the Windbloom Festival, Nahita's birthday, and different events like that. But this time around, our sibling is an active participant. I think that will be probably something they'll do to kind of keep the game alive after the main Genshin story is concluded. Or at least that's my speculation. Another thing I think that could happen is I think that they could have the war completely destroy the region, and we have to help rebuild along with our Abyssal Twin. And I think that could be another thing, like us helping people find friends and family who were lost, or helping repair buildings, and that being its own quest line. We could run into characters we know, helping them also help rebuild the regions. It's hard to say. And then, of course, I think like Genshin, I think like Hoyoverse usually does, I think Genshin is probably going to end up just having a bit of a delay. Having not a delay, but a period where the game is completely just put into a standby mode, where the only thing that's really going to get updated between updates is going to be smaller stuff, like adding in little small events that are part-time, and then also throwing in rerunning certain characters and all that. I don't think we're going to have a real period where we're not going to be like fully engrossed with some kind of new content. I just do think that Genshin, after the Conrian update, and after I think what will be the World Tour event with our sibling character, I just do think the game is going to end up kind of going into a bit of a down period. I don't think we're going to have to worry too much about like a period where the game just is full on dead. I think it's going to be more or less a slow grind until the game is fully developed, out of the way, and completed. And that's honestly my own personal opinion where Genshin Impact is going to end. I give this game 10 years of full life. The 4 years we've already had, the rest of this year, I'd say probably 2 more years for both Shesnaya and Conria. 2 years that can be the reunion tour / rebuilding the different regions that got destroyed during the final confrontation. And I do then think that the final update will just be 2 years of the game kind of being a online, but it's not getting active development role. So that's honestly what I think is probably going to happen. And that's my best speculation. So what do you guys think? Do you think I'm right? Do you think Genshin is going to have this kind of life cycle? And do you think the lore is going to be able to keep itself interesting enough to go down that pathway? I'd love to hear you guys' opinion in the comment section down below. And I like to say to you guys, geek out. Wait a minute. You know, it's not a Genshin video if you don't do some polls. So let's do a small bit of gambling. I have 20 polls worth of Primal Gems ready. So let's make a bet. If I pull Nouvelette during my 20 polls, I will actively do a fun little live stream with not a live stream, but I'll do a fun video where I grab a complete Genshin noob and explain to them the entire lore up to point. Obviously, I'll wait for 5.3 done so we can explain the Natlan Arc quest in full. So, are you guys ready to see if we do this? Let's go. Alright, first 10 pull. Let's see if we luck out. Nope, that is a 4-star pull. Let's just skip that. Oh, but we have another constellation. Interesting. Okay, and one more pull. This is all for it all. Are we going to have to do a Genshin lore video or no? And nope. No Genshin lore video. My friends can all rest soundly. Oh, I didn't want that. But, alright guys, thank you for watching this video. Geek out.